Next, we move on to the analysis of episode 207's plot. Before watching, don't forget to like. It helps. Luo Wang, I initially didn't want to kill you, but now don't blame me for what's about to happen. The Jiu Sea is dangerous and full of deadly threats. Every drop of sweat there is as heavy as Mount Taishan, and whirlpools of Jiu can appear at any moment. There's no time to think about everything now. Hand over the wings, and I'll spare your life. An outsider dared to invade our Jiu Sea, where the absorption force is so powerful, far more terrifying than the death abyss at Demon Sound Mountain. He's simply seeking death. Luo Feng decided to cultivate the world tree as his third body, and the fire god source crystal exploded with a deafening blast beneath the crowns of the world master and the world tree. The power of this crystal was terrifying, enough to destroy even immortal deities, comparable in might to a peak-level strike. In an instant, the space within a radius of 300,000 kilometers turned into a raging zone of destruction, and everything within 10,000 kilometers was completely reduced to nothingness. Further around, only a mutilated scene and leaf fragments remained, but for a world master-level world tree with a crown over a kilometer in diameter, such damage across 300,000 kilometers was negligible. Moreover, the epicenter of the explosion was tens of millions of kilometers from the trunk, and the energy waves that reached the trunk couldn't even make it tremble. After a low roar, the scattered emerald branches and leaves soared into the sky, rushing back to the crown, and leaf after leaf began flowing back. The damage within a radius of 300,000 kilometers rapidly healed under the surge of bubbling life energy. All wounded leaves returned to their places, as if the tree had never been injured. During the recovery process, a figure appeared from nowhere. This was the avatar of the demon killer race teleporting here and seeing countless leaf fragments converging toward a beam of light. He immediately reached out and grabbed a damaged branch that still held 3 torn leaf pieces, after which the demon killer avatar instantly made a jump. However, the moment the jade shield touched the branch, it was instantly covered by destructive energy. His body shuddered and froze, and a light breeze dispersed him into countless powder particles that vanished in the air without a trace. The cursed outsider dared to use the world tree. The entire huge crown canopy shook with rage and roared angrily. Father told me to kill him personally. He's pathetic and pitiful, dropping so many leaves. If not for Father, this clan would have fled long ago. The laughter of other world trees rang out one after another, some aged, some bright. But the enraged world master-level world tree roared, ordering everyone to shut up. Youngest 7th, this outsider has a very strange escape method. No spatial fluctuations at all, and if he leaves, finding him later will be very difficult. He injured you. What's wrong with me helping to punish him? A soft voice echoed throughout the world tree domain. The world master's crown danced furiously. Then the soft voice sounded again, saying that if he trains well and reaches immortality like his elder brothers, he won't fear outsiders anymore. The world tree snorted coldly, and its wounds completely healed during the conversation. Not a single fallen leaf remained on the ground. In a secluded cave on Bearstone Island, Luo Feng's eyes were full of shock, his whole body feeling the desperate attack experienced by the demon killer avatar. This was absolute power, like a higher being crushing an ant, and only the strongest world tree could possess such might, personally intervening at that. Luo Feng couldn't believe it. He had only cut off a small twig, and the explosion had only caused light wounds to the tree, yet a universe master-level being had stooped to such action. The third body was already on the verge of birth, but now it had suffered such a heavy blow, and Luo Feng's heart was full of anxiety. The most powerful world tree possessed universe master-level strength and mastered the talent of controlling space and time. And if it had stopped time, the demon killer avatar wouldn't have had the slightest chance to escape. He racked his brain over various plans, but none gave complete confidence. And just at this moment, Luo Feng felt that in the distant human territories, in his inner world in the primal secret region, the demon killer avatar was reborn. After a few seconds, a golden light of transmission through the divine kingdom flashed. The demon killer avatar stepped forward and appeared in the cave. The clone immediately used teleportation and disappeared, and when he appeared again, he was already high above the Jiu Sea. gazing at the tree island from afar. He chose the most conservative and reliable plan. The demon killer avatar teleported again and dissolved among the countless fluffy plant seeds floating above the tree island. Following along with these fluffy balls, he slowly drifted toward the island, and it would take just over 5 months to reach the outskirts of the World Tree. Then he would have the peak-level slave first activate the Fire God Source Crystal, and during their battle for this relic, Luo Feng had already carefully calculated everything. The peak-level slave would inevitably be killed, but everyone would believe that he was the instigator, and in the heat of battle, a huge number of branches and leaves would be thrown far beyond the light circle. Then the fluffy ball in which Luo Feng was hiding would fall on these leaves, and he would seize the moment for teleportation. So even if that universe master noticed something strange with the fluff a bit later, it would be too late. The distance remaining for the fluffs to reach the tree island now took only a month of drifting, and for the strongest world tree, the past incident was already a trifle. In geospace, inheritors often appeared anyway, coming for opportunities, and among them were plenty of the strongest capable of killing world master level world trees, so it was enough for him to just guard the trunks of his 8 children, as lost branches and leaves would quickly recover. Meanwhile, in the void beyond geospace, figures of the strongest from different races appeared simultaneously. Their bodies varied, from a giant, over 10 kilometers long, crawling immortal being to tiny representatives of a race only half a meter tall. "We have arrived in geospace," one of the strongest said quietly, adding that only thanks to the teleportation of Lord Z would they not have spent much more time on the journey and faced unnecessary dangers. "Yes, all thanks to Lord Zia." Another sharp and piercing voice rang out, destroying the friendly atmosphere, and its owner stood with a hunched back, for limbs ending in clawed paws, his entire body covered with dense scales. Golden patterns flickered on the scales, a golden mane cascaded down his face, and golden eyes were sharp as knives, and seeing him, the other strongest immediately straightened and directed their gazes at him and at the one called Lord Zia. Lord Zia towered 6 meters high, 6 pairs of black wings spread behind his back, a faint bloody aura swirled around his body. His mouth resembled a sharp blade, and his eyes were filled with crimson. He was one of the universe masters among the countless inheritors of Purple Thorn Island. He grinned and said that the road for him was just a matter of 1 second, but now that they had entered geospace, from here on they would have to rely on Fei Jing Wang. The scaled warrior, known as Fei Jing Wang, was also an inheritor of Purple Thorn Island, a great genius in the top 10, a special life form of the universe with a life level 2,000 times higher than ordinary beings. His 2 innate secret techniques were unique throughout the universe. He belonged to one of the higher universal forces, and with combat authority, could rival most universe masters. Geospace was full of dangers, but with him, the others' chances of survival increased significantly, and Fei Jing Wang laughed wildly, declaring that the trophies of their expedition would be divided according to merit, and he would choose first, and no one should object. As it should be, one after another, the other 5 immortal inheritors responded, clearly understanding that the very right to go with Fei Jing Wang and Lord Z already spoke of their position, and the real highest treasures wouldn't go to them anyway. Lord Z smirked to himself, thinking that if not for Fei Jing Wang's unparalleled gift for reconnaissance, he would never cooperate with him, and that these 5 were just background, because in the end, the heavy relics would go to the 2 of them anyway. Since we're in geospace, first we'll head to the safest Bare Stone Island, Fei Jing Wang ordered, and Lord Zia immediately used teleportation, instantly transferring all 7 to Bare Stone Island. Above the lifeless rocks, slender figures emerged from the air. These were Lord Zia and Fei Jing Wang's group. They swept the surroundings with sharp gazes and remained extremely vigilant. Although Bare Stone Island was safe, it held no treasures and had a small area. Beyond it, the Jiu Sea began immediately, and soon Fei Jing Wang's piercing voice rang out when he announced his intention to explore the Jiu Sea, the most dangerous place in all of geospace, and asked if they would go with him. "As you command." The 5 immortal inheritors were shocked, because the Jiu Sea was boundless. The reserves of treasures there could exceed the combined riches of all islands. But the danger there was also supreme, especially because of the Jiu Whirlpools. Finding oneself in such a whirlpool, even a universe master had less than 1% chance of survival, and one of the immortals timidly suggested first exploring other islands. But Fei Jing Wang snorted coldly, and then the five turned to Lord Ziya, asking his opinion. Among all present, Fei Jing Wang respected only this universe master, whose power was close to his own, and acting together, they increased their chances of success. If you're not planning to go deep into the Jiu Whirlpools, I'll go with you, Lord Ziya said after a brief thought, and Fei Jing Wang nodded, calling him not to worry and admitting that although he was confident, he would approach the Jiu Whirlpools with great caution and stay away from them. Lord Ziya agreed with relief. The five immortals exchanged glances and secretly transmitted to each other that without these two, exploring other islands would also bring them 9 deaths and 1 life. They decided it was better to follow them. Maybe they'd be lucky enough to encounter an opportunity, since they'd been stuck at the limit of their capabilities for infinitely long years, and now this expedition was a gamble with death. So in the end, all 5 agreed to go together. First, I'll check the dangers around. Fei Jing Wang stepped forward. The patterns on his scaled body flashed sharply. Phantom reflections appeared in his golden eyes, as if reflecting heaven and earth. This was his innate secret technique. On a universal scale, he could scan space in a straight beam over vast distances, leaving not a single hidden danger, and at the same time, no being below universe master level could notice this check. Bearstone Island is safe. Beyond is the Jiu Sea. Within 100,000 kilometers from the island, dangers can be disregarded, but in the depths of the sea they're everywhere. I've already found one universe master level being. Fei Jing Wang surveyed section by section. Suddenly, he turned right, slightly surprised, and then a strange smile appeared on his face, and Lord Baya asked what he had discovered. Yes, Fei Jing Wang's smile grew wider. There's the famous Blade King Luo Wang, and Lord Ziya together with the 5 immortals were shocked. Interesting, said Fei Jing Wang. He has winged treasures in which he's especially strong in flight and escape. On Purple Thorn Island he's unreachable, but here, it's the perfect opportunity. And he stuck out his scarlet tongue, licked his lips, and bared his sharp teeth. Fei Jing Wang looked at Lord Ziya, who was shocked, and said, "You wouldn't dare," but Fei Jing Wang only sneered contemptuously, assuring that the Lord didn't need to interfere, much less warn Luo Feng. Otherwise he would become his enemy. "Don't worry, I won't interfere," Lord Ziya nodded helplessly, and Fei Jing Wang, saying that the number of peak races is so great that they can rival the alliance of humans, monsters, and others, smirked and slowly flew toward the mountain where Luo Feng was hiding. He deliberately slowed down so as not to cause unnecessary disturbances, and thought that if he could seize the winged treasures, for this alone the trip to Jiu would be worth all the risks and wouldn't require more from him. Delving into the Jiu Sea, he looked at the world with greed in his golden eyes, because the nature of special life forms always remains greedy and fierce. In a cave inside the mountain, Luo Feng concealed his presence with the help of a miniature detector, sat cross-legged, and eagerly waited, knowing that in a month he could obtain the World Tree Leaf, grow the 3rd body, and then break through to immortality. He didn't even feel that Fei Jing Wang's reconnaissance had already fixed his location, and didn't know that 7 powerful beings had already reached the mountain slope and stopped at a distance at Fei Jing Wang's silent command. This person has a miniature detector, Fei Jing Wang chuckled. But these pitiful devices, even the most advanced models of the mechanical race, don't compare to my innate secret art of spatial blocking. Fei Jing Wang glanced at the mountain and imposed space locking, in one instant freezing spatial fluctuations over half of Bearstone Island, after which he was the first to rush to the mountain, and the other 6 figures followed him. Bad. The moment Luo Feng felt the space blockade, his gaze slid over the cloaking beacon in the mountain crevice, and another beacon was hidden in a cave on the other side of the mountain and served as an anchor point for transmission from the divine kingdom of his slave. Even if he retreated now, he could return later by direct teleportation. So Luo Feng spread his wings and burst out of the cave, but as soon as he left it, terrible pressure fell upon him. Looking up, Luo Feng saw a slightly hunched wolf-like figure, whose entire body was covered with scales with golden patterns, and the golden mane and golden eyes of this strongest being were directed straight at him, piercingly fixing the target. Fei Jing Wang. Luo Feng's heart contracted. He well knew the fame of this high-level genius from Purple Thorn Island, a master of pursuit and hunting, by nature greedy and cruel. Luo Feng desperately activated the wing treasures, bringing speed to the limit. But Fei Jing Wang only laughed, saying that Blade King Luo He Wang still dares to try to escape from him, and his own speed also sharply increased, allowing him to pursue relentlessly. I'm famous for the art of pursuit. My race is born with exceptional speed, and my body far surpasses yours. Let's see which of us is faster. Fei Jing Wang's body was exceptionally powerful, his life level 2,000 times higher than ordinary strong beings. A human's divine body at its peak could possess power 100,000 times greater than a world master. However, Fei Jing Wang had power 200 million times higher than a world master, which allowed him, even in physical might, to rival universe masters. And his innate gift of speed gave him the ability to press Luo Feng step by step. Luo Feng realized with horror that even with full deployment of the Wing Treasure's power, he couldn't increase the distance. Moreover, Fei Jing Wang continued to slowly close the gap, and then Luo Feng instantly switched the wings to the second form. The wings immediately transformed into rows of long combat blades, which noisily cut through space, creating fierce spatial flows. And in these chaotic vortices, Luo Feng's figure became blurred, and the pursuing Fei Jing Wang was drawn into the storm. Countless space fragments the size of planets crashed into him with a roar, and although he broke through them and shattered many, his speed dropped significantly, so he could no longer quickly catch up to Luo Feng. The power of this treasure is truly extraordinary. Fei Jing Wang didn't get angry, but was delighted, mockingly transmitting that such a supreme treasure shouldn't belong to a human, and that only a powerful special life form of the universe like himself was worthy of it. So Luo Feng should hand over the wings. Fei Jing Wang began burning his divine body without hesitation, being confident in himself because he had enough treasures for recovery. And as soon as his divine body ignited, his power soared to a truly heavenly level. His speed increased sharply. He literally pushed a wide tunnel through the spatial flows, turning all space fragments obstructing the path into a stream of particles, and the fleeing Luo Feng, feeling what was happening behind, felt his heart painfully contract. His speed is even higher than mine. Luo Feng immediately made the wings move like a butterfly, constantly changing direction in the chaotic space, moving forward and sideways along a completely unpredictable trajectory, like a racing car suddenly making sharp turns at enormous speed. Such maneuvers temporarily confused Fei Jing Wang, but although he was forced to continuously correct course, he still stayed on Luo Feng's tail, not letting him break away. In a straight chase, even the wing treasures in the second form couldn't rival Fei Jing Wang, burning his divine body. But in flexibility and maneuverability, Luo Feng significantly surpassed him, and he could only with difficulty not allow himself to fall completely behind. Fei Jing Wang roared furiously, trying to suppress Luo Feng with his divine power, but the pressure was immediately torn apart by the wing treasures, and Luo Feng transmitted by voice that the wings were granted to him by a universe master, so even if Fei Jing Wang took them, they would still be returned to the owner. Haha, don't try to pressure me with a universe master. Fei Jing Wang laughed, saying that the human alliance of course has universe masters, but this doesn't frighten him. He was delighted by the wonderful power of the treasure. He admitted that his base power was much higher than Luo Feng's, and although with acceleration he could catch up to him, in maneuverability he couldn't keep up, so he could only stay close, not allowing Luo Feng to get too far. In the distance, Lord Ziya and the 5 immortal inheritors watched as 2 figures raced through the air, having already left Bear Stone Island far behind and finding themselves above the Jiu Sea, and were completely stunned. Even burning his divine body, Fei Jing Wang still can't catch him. This truly deserves the status of a supreme treasure. One of the immortals sighed, and Lord Ziya noted that burning the divine body, though it increases speed, greatly complicates maneuvering. I think he's about to use another trick, Lord Ziya added, and indeed, unable to get closer after a long chase, Fei Jing Wang suddenly summoned a purple crystalline sphere before him. Driven by divine power, the sphere developed speed far exceeding Fei Jing Wang's own speed, and instantly reached the space above Luo Feng, sharply increasing from palm size to a giant star thousands of kilometers in diameter. A huge maw appeared in the lower part of the star, inside which a whirlpool roared, and from there burst a monstrous absorption force, aimed directly at Luo Feng. Luo Feng's maneuvers, still light and flexible a second ago, immediately became noticeably more difficult, and Fei Jing Wang loudly announced that this was his sealing treasure. He said that although he didn't yet possess full understanding of the laws of space, relying on this supreme treasure and burning divine power, he could create sealing methods even more terrifying than those of many universe masters, and he didn't believe Luo Feng would break free. Luo Feng found himself in the absorption zone, his movements disrupted, and he furiously screamed to himself that sealing treasures must first heavily wound and weaken the opponent to then suppress them, and attempting to seal him immediately was just a dream. The blade edges along the wing treasure's perimeter furiously cut the surrounding space, breaking everything, because the power of sealing treasures was in suppression. But they were weak in attack and could immediately swallow a strong opponent only with a huge difference in power. Relying on the might of the wings, Luo Feng desperately broke out through the thickness of the absorption force and finally broke through the limits of the suction zone, momentarily stunning Fei Jing Wang, who had been laughing loudly just recently. But then he snorted contemptuously, calling the treasure truly outstanding, and coldly said that Blade King Luo Wang was one he didn't want to kill, but now let him not blame him, after which he unexpectedly opened his mouth wide, and everything around plunged into deathly silence. In the distance, Lord Ziya and the others were shocked that Fei Jing Wang's single roar could mean the death of the Blade King, because although Luo Feng had the talent for incarnations, this body would almost certainly die, and the treasures would go to Fei Jing Wang. The five immortals exchanged mental messages, and Lord Ziya agreed that Fei Jing Wang's two innate techniques, Reconnaissance and Spiritual Attack, had no equals in the universe. The moment Fei Jing Wang opened his mouth, Luo Feng felt an invisible attack crash upon him. A terrible soul roar crashed into his consciousness like a storm, instantly stunning him and rushing straight to the core of his soul. The Guardian Pearl Tower suddenly surfaced from the depths, flashed with blinding light, and covered his entire soul. And before Luo Feng's inner gaze appeared Fei Jing Wang's head, a huge bloody gaping opening instead of a mouth roaring, unleashing the roar. The Pearl Tower trembled slightly, holding the blow with all its strength. Luo Feng's soul was on the verge of destruction. His spiritual power was almost completely shattered, and only the core itself barely withstood under the pearl's protection. What a terrible technique! Luo Feng's consciousness returned, and he realized with horror that without the Pearl Tower, his soul would have long been ground to nothing, and even with its protection, resistance required colossal efforts. The stronger the special life form, the more perverted its innate methods become, leaving far behind such entities as silver armadillos. And Luo Feng clearly understood that if he continued to drag out time with Fei Jing Wang, trouble was inevitable. Gritting his teeth, he rushed straight down into the depths of the Jiu Sea, which was the most dangerous place in all of geospace, especially because of the Jiu Whirlpools, but now it was his only chance of salvation. With a loud explosion, water scattered as Luo Feng burst into the thickness of the Jiu Sea, and Fei Jing Wang's eyes widened in shock. He couldn't believe Luo Feng had managed to withstand his innate soul technique. His face twisted in a furious grimace, and growling, he rushed after, also diving into the water, while above the surface Lord Ziya and the other six watched from above, amazed that Luo Feng had been able to survive the blow and remain alive. Fei Jing Wang is burning his divine body and using an innate technique of power comparable to an ordinary universe lord attack. How could the Blade King withstand it? One of the immortals wondered, and another guessed that Luo Feng must have a treasure protecting the soul. Lord Ziya suddenly realized that a human by himself could never have withstood such an attack, meaning only a treasure could have protected him. And remembering that even the Insect King possessed two supreme treasures, he considered it natural that humans who valued the Blade King gave him a couple of treasures. Two treasures, All 5 immortals were shocked, and greed awakened in Lord Ziya, because he, being a universe master, didn't have a single supreme treasure, and now he thought that if he seized both, even hiding them, he would remain in huge profit. A predatory fire flashed in Lord Ziya's eyes, and he too rushed into the ocean depths, and in the icy water of the Jiu Sea hung a frightening spirit of unknown power. Fei Jing Wang furiously pursued Luo Feng, not removing the spatial blockade for a moment, angrily shouting at him that he would never escape, that since he had been able to withstand his soul attack, it meant he had a soul treasure, and all this would become his spoils. Treasures protecting the soul are even more rare and precious than flying ones, and Fei Jing Wang finally snapped, while Luo Feng, in the infinite depth of the sea, constantly changed direction, deliberately leading the chase through the most dangerous areas. In the ocean depths, every drop of water was as heavy as a huge mountain, but even this couldn't stop 2 figures, one running and the other relentlessly pursuing, and Fei Jing Wang, worked up, shouted that the Blade King had no chance of escape. He yelled that Luo Feng relied on wing treasures to escape and on soul treasures to block soul attacks, but he had no treasure protecting against material attacks, and unless he had a flying palace treasure, his doom was inevitable. With a loud roar, Fei Jing Wang waved his claws, and a pillar of gray divine energy rushed forward, directed straight at Luo Feng. And although he himself adhered to the combat path, and attacks with external divine power weren't his strong suit, thanks to monstrous strength and burning divine body, even such a simple blow could heavily wound Luo Feng. Luo Feng's heart contracted at the thought that flying palace treasures possessed wonderful defense, allowing one to ignore most attacks, sheltering the master inside. But unfortunately, he didn't have one, so he could only evade with continuous maneuvers. He controlled the wing treasures, maintaining high speed and chaotic course changes, creating around himself bubbling spatial flows. And when the beam of gray divine power broke through the water thickness and vortices, it whooshed past to the left of Luo Feng. Luo Feng managed to avoid a direct hit, and feeling this, quietly sighed with relief, understanding that at high speeds, like on Earth when dodging a bullet, an unpredictable trajectory gives almost no chance to hit the target. Let's see how many times you can dodge. Fei Jing Wang declared with triumphant laughter that Luo Feng definitely didn't have a flying palace, and the Blade King was doomed to death, then consecutively released 2 more beams of divine power. These beams contained not a drop of understanding of laws. They relied only on burning divine power comparable to the might of the strongest universe master to win with speed, and Fei Jing Wang, with a mad gleam in his eyes, said that if he himself didn't catch up to Luo Feng, his divine power would still reach him. His power was many times greater than Luo Feng's. Chasing him was like hunting a cricket or ant, and it was enough for him to simply crush the victim with raw divine power, and Luo Feng, still furiously changing direction, managed to avoid one beam, but the other slightly grazed the edge of his wings. His body shuddered from the impact, but he changed direction again, forcing the wing treasures to work at the limit, and wavering, thought, should he summon the demon killer avatar? He knew that this avatar's innate secret technique allowed free gliding inside spatial prisons, but couldn't transport other beings, and this was the key difference from teleportation, which could envelop allies, whereas his method transformed only himself into part of space. If Luo Feng drove his main body into the world ring for the demon killer avatar to dissolve it into himself, then he could transport it, but the divine power with which Fei Jing Wang had filled everything around gave not a single chance to pull off such a thing. Dodging once more, Fei Jing Wang mockingly said that the wing treasures truly made Luo Feng's escape abilities formidable, but now it was time to see if he could avoid the third attack. Mad and bubbling divine power flashed in Fei Jing Wang's eyes. He began compressing it, knowing that only in extreme concentration does it reveal maximum might, while dispersed it's only good for reconnaissance and other auxiliary techniques. Divine threads. Prison. Fei Jing Wang sharply extended his claws, and thousands of extremely compressed threads of divine power rushed after Luo Feng with a mad whistle, each in density rivaling his own body. This technique alone cost him 10% of his divine body, whereas all previous attacks combined took about 1%, and Fei Jing Wang, full of greed, was confident that now Luo Feng had nowhere to run. He thought that the two treasures were already in his hands, and possessing them. Even when encountering universe lords, he could preserve hope of escape. But at this moment in the depths of the Jiu Sea, a huge whirlpool suddenly opened. Enormous tearing force rushed in all directions, and from the abyss of the whirlpool rose a colossal blood-red figure, whose curved blood horns emitted a low, angry roar that exploded directly in Fei Jing Wang's brain, accusing outsiders of daring to disturb the peace of their Jiu Sea and that they must die. What? Fei Jing Wang, stunned, turned and saw a Jiu Whirlpool, of whose danger he knew, but never expected its appearance from nowhere, and even less expected that a universe master would burst from it, whose presence, as it turned out, slightly exceeded his own. Get lost, Fei Jing Wang, the bloodhorn being's voice thundered, and Fei Jing Wang immediately drove his thousands of divine power threads into a single spear, hurling it at the flashing bloodlight, understanding that this opponent was the real deadly threat, whereas Luo Feng was already, in his opinion, prey in the bag. When the two powers collided, their might was equal, which slightly surprised the bloodhorned one. But Fei Jing Wang opened his mouth again to launch a soul attack. The water around froze, and an invisible soul wave rushed straight at the bloodhorned being. But he roared that spiritual attacks don't work on his race, and without slowing his step, lunged at Fei Jing Wang, declaring that he couldn't oppose him. From the brief skirmish, Fei Jing Wang already understood that the opponent's power slightly exceeded his. The spear created from 10% of his divine body was only comparable to a blow that cost the other about 1%, and the soul attack proved useless. And then he realized why they say that falling into a Jiu Whirlpool makes survival almost impossible. Anyone who appears from here turns out to be so terrifyingly strong, flashed through his thoughts. But he also understood that although inferior in strength, he surpassed such an enemy in escape methods, and rushed after Luo Feng again, while the bloodhorn pursuer chased him from behind. Now they flew one ahead, the other behind, and Fei Jing Wang, master of acceleration and pursuit, moved faster than Luo Feng and the bloodhorned one, loudly declaring that he would first kill Luo Feng, then break away from the pursuer. He waved his claws again, gathering a huge amount of divine power threads, and Luo Feng, seeing this, stopped hesitating, flapped his wings, and headed straight for the Jiu Whirlpool, seeing in it the only path to salvation. The roar of tearing force and crushing might of the Jiu Whirlpool crashed upon him like stone millstones. Luo Feng's bones creaked and cracked, his face twisted, and he was horrified, realizing that this force alone was enough to turn him to dust. In horror, he summoned the Vortex Wind Star, which immediately appeared, and instantly dove inside. Because the Vortex Wind Star was a sealing treasure hiding a separate space inside and capable of cutting off more than 99% of external attacks. However, its disadvantage was obvious. It was easy for an enemy to capture, and inside the ability to maneuver and avoid blows dropped sharply, which is exactly why earlier, during the chase, he didn't dare use it, fearing they would simply grab him along with the treasure. Inside the Vortex Wind Star stretched an expansive world bathed in golden glow. Luo Feng stood there and merged consciousness with the star, checking the external environment, a space vortex resembling a secret domain. He pondered, remembering how once he had already gotten through a space vortex into a mysterious place and miraculously seized the heart of space, thereby giving a huge chance to the demon killer avatar. Soon the environment outside sharply stabilized, and sliding there with thought, Luo Feng was horrified. Within 100 kilometers stood an alien army camp. 300 immortal warriors with blood-red bodies and curved blood horns stood around, belonging to the same people as the blood-horned one who had pursued Fei Jing Wang earlier. The chief among them radiated incredible pressure, reaching the level of invincible Feng Wang, and several warriors closest to the vortex noticed how the Vortex Wind Star approached, crying out that it was a treasure. Luo Feng cast forward his will, and the alien warriors roared and rushed toward the star, but in one instant the star disappeared, and in its place appeared Luo Feng in silver armor and with silver wings. "Won't keep you company." He threw a glance and flapped his wings, cutting through the void and rushing away, and the alien warriors, with hunting excitement, like predators seeing prey, rushed after him. The commander, roaring menacingly, gave the order, first and second squads to follow him, the third to remain in place, and about 200 blood figures swiftly rushed after. Luo Feng acutely felt that this world was unusual. The resistance was enormous. He raised his gaze and saw the starry sky, and the air was filled with visible blood mist suppressing all spatial fluctuations. Teleportation and transfer through the Divine Kingdom were impossible here, and Luo Feng instantly understood why even universe masters from this alien people were forced to use secret methods of the Jiu Whirlpool rather than teleportation and the Divine Kingdom. Ha! Outsider, these are our lands. Here you will be strongly suppressed, and we, like fish in water, you won't escape. The roar of alien warriors reached him through divine power channels. Luo Feng turned and saw that their speed was indeed great, but he still made the winged treasures raise a storm of spatial flows, bringing speed to the limit. So in the alien's eyes, he turned into a tiny silver dot and disappeared from view. They all froze in disbelief, shouting how such speed was possible, and why an immortal outsider in their own world could be faster than them. Because over infinitely long years they had understood that all immortals and weaker outsiders here would be seriously slowed down. It was easy for them to catch immortals, as well as many universe masters, and only when encountering the latter were they obliged to report to stronger members of the race. So the commander, irritably growling, ordered to immediately report that an immortal outsider had managed to escape, otherwise they all faced death. Luo Feng swept hundreds of billions of kilometers before hiding in thick grass, amazed at how enormous this world was, because within such a distance there wasn't a single other alien being. He understood that this race's numbers were very small, but each member's strength was extremely great, and was shocked, understanding that without teleportation and the Divine Kingdom, he could only play the role of game in this hunt. He guessed he was in the very heart of the Jiu Sea, though still within geospace, and checking cosmic coordinates, calmed down a bit. Though he couldn't teleport, the Demon Killer Avatar's ability to glide through space was still available, and if he wasn't pursued too zealously, Reconnaissance and infiltration wouldn't seem impossible to him. One more month and the Demon Killer Avatar can act. Can't fail at the very end, Luo Feng pondered, knowing that even with the Avatar there was no complete guarantee of escape, so he needed to turn to his teacher because the situation had gotten out of control. But despite everything, he was firmly determined to obtain the World Tree Leaf. So immediately through the virtual universe, he contacted the Chaos Master. And meanwhile, in the ancient city in the very center of geospace, the aliens also used the virtual world to communicate within the race. You couldn't even catch one immortal outsider, roared a giant with blood-red horns and black armor. Then he cried out, calling his children to follow him. This general led 10 select warriors into the sky, but then a voice sounded in his consciousness, and he immediately stopped, and the warriors behind his back one after another also slowed down. "General, it's the prince," he said in a low voice, and from the majestic palace in the center of the ancient city flew out dozens of figures, led by a youth with handsome features. He had light skin, blood patterns flickered on his face, and his body was protected by golden red armor treasure. A powerful aura emanated from him, and he sharply differed from the other blood-skinned tribesmen with curved horns. "Your Highness," the giant bowed slightly, and 10 warriors knelt, and the prince addressed him, calling him General Mama too. "I heard your squad discovered an outsider, moreover at the immortal level, and yet he managed to escape." The prince's voice was soft and elegant, and the giant respectfully confirmed this. "Amusing, so this immortal is so strong, probably one of the best inheritors of the ancestor god religion," the prince smiled lightly. "Your Highness is invincible. This outsider won't withstand one of your blows," the general hastily flattered, but the prince only shook his head, saying not to underestimate outsiders, and suggested indicating the way, because he's usually bored and entertains himself with hunting, and this outsider seemed to him quite an amusing prey. To the question about danger, the prince answered with a confident smile that he had 108 brothers, and none of them had ever perished, so to say something threatened them would be laughable. The giant had no choice but to accept the order with unhappy resignation, and soon dozens of figures surrounded the prince, rushing in the direction where Luo Feng had fled. Thus began a large-scale hunt, whose target was precisely Luo Feng. Thanks for the support. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. See you next week.